One of the best things I've ever done as a senator, I voted for the aid for Israel, for Ukraine, and Taiwan. I mean, like for me, that's a global struggle against democracy. And obviously, Russia was the aggressor. And now, I'm old enough. I say this before. I'm like, when I grew up, I'm like Red Dawn. I'm like, you're cheering for the Wolverines, and Russia was the evil empire, and it is.
All right, we are back with the senior Democratic senator from Pennsylvania. It's John Fetterman. I've done a wardrobe change, in your spirit. I am like your number one apologist about wearing the hoodie on the floor. No, there's no need to wear a suit for these people. All right, so you just keep doing you.
Well, the truth story behind the hoodie thing. It's like I never went to anybody or Schumer, anyone to ask for that. Like that just. I read about that. I'm like, I never asked for those kinds of things. I was never gonna just give speeches, hoodie there. But for me, I'm a comfort guy, and I'm also a lazy man, and I don't have to iron it. It's just easy to wash and I'm ready to go. And so right now, and plus it's hard to find suits too.
Well, I'm sure for somebody your size, you don't want to be at the big and tall shop. Well, I appreciate it. I wanted to have you on. You really spoke out this week in defense of trans athletes, and I wanted to start there, and then we'll get into some Trump stuff. But you wrote this: the small handful of trans athletes in Pennsylvania are in a political maelstrom. They deserve an ally, and I am one. Empty show votes or cruelty on social media aren't part of a thoughtful, dignified solution. What made you jump out so aggressively on that, and what do you think a more thoughtful solution would be?
Well, because for me, it's been born from my commitment to never to pick on anybody. I mean, when I was very young, I got bullied and picked on, and that really kind of shaped a lot of my experience. And I'm not part of those communities, LGBTQ kinds of things. But now, that really started when I was a small town mayor, when gay marriage was illegal. Literally, it was illegal. Right. And then there was an opportunity. There was someone starting to sign those things. And I said, 100%. I got on TV. I'm like, I'll sign them. Come with me. And that was illegal. And then the governor at the time threatened to have me arrested. And I said, well, hey, you know where I live. Bring it. And I signed for those things. And that was the first. I was at the time the only official in Pennsylvania willing to sign those, and they all became legal. And that was back in 2013. And so it's the same kind of thing. It's like marriage equality. I really support that. And if I was convicted of that crime, because technically it was a crime, I'm like, well, hey, then that might be the end of my political career. But, I'll never, degrade somebody based on who they love. And now for this, and I'm not dumb either. I know the polling, and now a lot of people are saying it's absurd, kinds of thing. And now, so for me, that's when I felt like it's a time to really say, look, now for me, it's about, I'm not going to bully or I'm not going to degrade those. And now, we're a 13 million people in our state. And it's a small number of people that are involved on that. And I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she plays basketball, and I'm not afraid that she's going to get mowed down. But for me, it turns into an issue that is more appropriate to be handled on a very hyper local level, and not dropping them into a meat grinder and national times and weaponizing that. And I know I'm not dumb. I know there'll be commercials saying, Fetterman's for they, them, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, bring it in. I'm not afraid to stand on my side on that, because there's these kids, for me, how difficult that it is. And now in this kinds of a world, nuance goes to die, and having a more meaningful conversation on that, it's difficult right now. So for me, that I made that choice, and I could have tried to keep my head down like a lot of my other colleagues decided to do that. But for me, even though I know it's politically unpopular, I think that's the kind of time to do that. And I do believe that a person's character is defined by the things that they're willing to do, even if that moves against their political interests.
Well, I appreciate that. Maybe I should have got married in Braddock, because it was like not till 5 years later that I got my gay marriage. But it is just one more thing on the nuance of this. It's just worth saying. Martina Navratilova, not a liberal. I saw her tweeting at you on saying that I don't know, it's different for teen girls. Like and Gavin Newsom, big progressive, said that he is breaking with Democrats on youth sports.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, he's, in my opinion, he's going to get the worst of both worlds of that. I mean, he's going to be seen as just flip-flopping, and he's going to anger like his progressive base, and we all knows why he's doing those kinds of things. And then on the other side are going to know why he's making those kind of changes. So for me, like, it's like he's going to own the worst of both of those worlds for that.
Yeah. To me, the clearer one is the trans military thing. That's the one that I like you. I see the nuance of the youth sports issue. I
did a video. I'm like, look, I mean, it was not. There was a time when it wasn't controversial. There were desegregating the military was incredibly controversial at the time. Yeah. I'm not going to serve. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to bunk with black soldiers. And now, of course, that needed to change. And then I'm old enough to remember when don't tell, don't ask thing. Yeah. And now it's like, regardless of who you love, I mean, that doesn't make you more lethal or more suitable to be a soldier based on who you love. And now that was really front and center with the Hegseth nomination. Well, what about women in combat? And now based on their gender. And when you have gender neutral kinds of things and then it shouldn't matter based on your gender. And now, so regardless on how you identify, that doesn't make you any more or less lethal. And as long as you're able to meet those kinds of a standard, for me, it's about the dignity of the soldier. And I'm not going to degrade that based on their race, obviously, on their gender, on who they love, and not how they identify. And that's why I did that video, knowing that it's not politically popular. I guess so. That's why I decided to lean on that, because I think it's part of that. It's part of that narrative, that arc of whether what was really controversial and unthinkable based on race. And now we're along that arc.
Yeah, I think the military one might become popular, framed the right way. The idea that like a draft dodging guy wearing makeup is going to ban people who volunteered to serve based on their gender identity. It's sick. It's gross to me.
Yeah, well, I just, it's like it was considered controversial. It's like based on who you love. I don't understand that. And I'm like, for me, like for I say to my conservative friends, it's like, it's about freedom. It's those are the fundamental kinds of things I love the freedom to love who you love. And now if you have that kinds of internal conflict about your gender, I didn't experience those kinds of things, sure. But I know people that have, and they are coming from a very sincere place, and they are trying to live, their truths. And I don't think that they don't deserve to be ridiculed or turned into pariahs. And definitely, teenagers especially, I'm not going to be part of dropping them into that meat grinder.
What'd you make of the Zelenskyy meeting on Friday and the way that the president's been treating our ally Ukraine, cutting off intelligence, and now I guess a report this morning potentially getting rid of legal status for Ukrainian.
Well, for me, I've been unapologetically pro-Ukraine. I'm like, one of the best things I've ever done as a senator, I voted for the aid for Israel, for Ukraine, and Taiwan. I mean, like, for me, that's a global struggle against democracy. And obviously, Russia was the aggressor. And now I'm old enough. I say this before. I'm like, when I grew up, I'm like Red Dawn. I'm like, you're cheering for the Wolverines. And Russia was the evil empire. And it is. If you disagree with Putin, 2 days later, they find you because you fell out of a window. I mean, I absolutely didn't agree with what happened in the White House, but I didn't jump online and started yelling because I don't think. But two things can be true at the same time. I certainly didn't appreciate what happened in the White House, but it's also undeniable that Ukraine doesn't have he doesn't have all the cards. I mean, what's true now too? The president is the commander of chief, and he has the ability to shape and really alter the contour of that. And if we're moving towards peace, I don't want to inflame that situation.
But I mean, we're not. Come on, we're not moving towards peace. Trump is not. Putin does not want peace. What evidence is there that Putin wants peace? And Trump has not asked Putin for anything. What has Trump asked Putin for as part of peace?
No, I think Putin is a killer, and of course Russia is our enemy always, and that hasn't going to change. But my hope is that it is moving towards, because I do not believe that the war in Ukraine is sustainable. Yeah. And I have met amputees. I have met them, and they're getting all back to the front line. And now, if you're sending those wounded men there, it's a terrible situation. And if there's a path for peace, then I don't agree those kinds of terms necessarily. And I fully support seizing. There's about 218 billion of seized Russian assets. And I'm absolutely they need to seize that. And those are the kind of assets that should rebuild it. We should rebuild that. And I don't think we should extract those kinds of funds, and repaid our nation. For me, I thought it was always a bargain to break and humiliate the Russia military and demonstrated their lack of capabilities.
Talking about not jumping online and being alarmed, you wrote after Trump's, whatever that was, not State of the Union speech, the address to Congress, that that your colleagues participated in a sad cavalcade of self-owns and unhinged petulance. Said we are becoming the metaphorical car alarms that nobody pays attention to. Like, I don't know though. Aren't we in car alarm territory? Isn't it time for alarm?
What I'm saying though, it's like, of course we're, there are things that are concerned, but without realizing the circumstances and part of the reasons why we ended up in this place. I mean, I'm a big believer in American democracy. And right now, when we're 53 and 47 in the Senate here, and they own the government right now. And of course, they're going to lose the House. I hope they're going to lose the House. So they're going to do a lot of these things. I don't agree with a lot of those things. But for me, do you think what they did during the SOTU, if you thought that was smart messaging, if you landed, I mean, I don't agree with that.
I didn't think it was smart. I agreed with you on that. But I guess I'd just say this: Trump. If I look at your phrase, unhinged petulance. I can't think of a phrase that better describes Donald Trump than unhinged petulance. All he did was call Joe Biden Dementia Joe. He yelled and he screamed and he posted and he bleated. He did embarrassing things. And in the end, he convinced a lot of people. I don't know, like, isn't politics, part of politics, telling people about all of the terrible things that the opposing party is doing? I guess I didn't really think that what happened at the State of the Union was particularly good, but I think that Democrats should be louder, not quieter. What do you think about that?
What I'm saying though is what I witnessed. What I witnessed wasn't helpful, and that wasn't moving the ball for Democrats. Yeah. I don't believe that. And if you can't just all stand and cheer for a 13-year-old boy that got, I mean, I have a 13-year-old myself, got over cancer. I mean, that's the wrong message on that.
I agree. Can't you do both?
And again, I remember when Joe Wilson, that jerk off yelled, "You lie, you lie," and everyone recoiled and like that was appalled by that. And it's like, so now we became the Joe Wilson of 2025, and that was a loser in 2009, and I don't think that's a winner or it's appropriate anymore now in 2025.
Yeah, I agree when it comes to the behavior in the room. I'm talking a little broader than that. I guess my point is, can't you stand and cheer for the 13-year-old with the brain cancer, and then also the next day go out and say Donald Trump and Elon Musk are acting illegally, they're firing vets at the VA? Donald Trump
Yeah,
is
and I don't
abandoning.
agree. I don't agree with all those things.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand what their upside is. I don't know what they get out of a lot of that chaos. I don't understand what they're getting out of it. But now they seem to be wanting to triple down on some of that kinds of thing. But I do believe, core is that if you become the party of chaos, you lose. And the second Americans decide it's like, people aren't going to vote for chaos. And if you continue to create more and more and more kinds of chaos, again, of course, there is going to be a backlash. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. You've kind of have a different. I defined your strategy the other day to somebody, and you can tell me if this is wrong. And maybe this isn't a strategy. Maybe you're just being you, as you're basically voting with the Democrats on most everything. A couple of things, no, but like most everything, you're voting with the Democrats.
No,
You're spending a lot of time
not
talking
most
about
of
how
them.
they're annoying.
No, most of them. The border. Like I really pushed and got Laken. I was like
Yep.
the co-sponsor
True.
for Laken, and then Israel, absolutely. So not like most.
I just mean
Not
like
most
you,
of it,
people
not-
were saying that you were going to vote for the cabinet appointees, and like again, on certain issues on immigration, on Israel, there have been policy differences from some in your party, but a lot of the times you're still you endorse Bernie, like you're still a pretty liberal person on most issues, right?
Yeah, well, that was
rhetoric.
more than that was like 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was about very basic kinds of things. And like I've described, it's like the label left me. Like it wasn't that. So from eight years ago, the world was much different. People thought that it was unthinkable that Donald Trump could win. And he did. Now, I would like to remind everybody, Trump, won 2 out of the 3 last cycles, and he nearly could have won the 2020.
Yep.
So why? And I'm trying to figure out a way forward. Hey, I wish I had a deep blue state or a district, and I can yell and get on and be like, but that's easy. And then they can monetize that, and they can jump on an email and raise money for their campaign for that thing. But for me, I'm trying to find a way forward for our party, and I'm not going to be a Manchin. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be independent or doing all those kinds of things. So, but when you represent one of the most purple land in the country, and I stopped believing on like cheap heat online and just yelling just because I don't agree with it on the time. If you yell at everything, then everything just becomes absurd. That's why, does anybody call the police when they see or hear a car alarm going off? No, people ignore that, and it's like, well, something, whatever. So if everything, and the world is on fire, and that actually doesn't happen, people stop listening or just assume that's really what you do. So I want to be very selective. And now, like a constitutional crisis, the second the president defies the Supreme Court or any of that's literally the definition of a constitutional crisis. And I'd be the first person to just be like, no, we have so right. I think if you pick your own fights. So I like to believe that, your words will matter more if it's not always spending time yelling and saying that the world's going to end.
Yeah. What, I want to ask one more question about you going forward, but just one more thing about going back. You said you think the left or the progressives or whatever left you. Like, what do you think changed, right? I mean, because look, it's funny. In 2015, you were endorsing Bernie. In 2016, I was for Jeb. So like here we are. So something's changed, and people kind of wonder whether you've changed. But I guess you're saying that you don't think you've changed. You think that the progressives has changed, or have you changed?
Well, I think it's both. I mean, for me, if anything, what happened about Israel, what happened on 10/7, a lot certainly changed. I was shocked of the way that members of my party, the way they behaved for that, and also the border. I mean, if you've been on my social media, I dropped a chart, and it's like, what's real chaos? What's real chaos? 250, 300,000 people showing up at our border every month. That's the size of Pittsburgh. And now, like, that's that's chaos. And the Democrats had no answer to say, well, it's all going to work out. It's all just fine. Like everything's fine. There's nothing wrong there. So that really is that's true chaos. And I as my party tried to warn that we're gonna be punished by this and trying to pretend that we're wrong. And I always knew we were going to get rolled on that bipartisan deal thing. Do you think Trump's going to give that away? I always say, like, I'm never going to pick a fine on fried chicken with Colonel Sanders. He owns the border and that's definitely too valuable for him to hand that away. So it's obvious we were going to get rolled.
Yeah. So going forward, one thing I wanted to ask you is, I was listening to some focus groups yesterday, and there were some guys that I don't know, kind of sounded like you. They're these kind of voters that they really don't like big pharma. They like Bernie. But they also really appealed to RFK. RFK appeals to them because they think that these kind of the big pharma, these big corporations are out to get them. These used to be Democratic voters. They're examples of these young men that now have kind of lost trust in institutions that are now becoming MAGA voters. And I'm wondering how you think Democrats could get them back.
I'm not sure. I don't. In fact, I'm not sure. I mean, I've described that. I've witnessed that starting back in 2015, 16.
Yeah.
The longer it makes men, the more difficult it makes men to remain as a Democrat with some of the kinds of the climate and those things. And that's why they're gonna. So
what would be your strategy to vote for you? Forget the Democratic Party. Like what kind of messages do you think you're going to focus on? That you think might resonate with them.
No, well, I'm not like a you should guy. I'm just it's my own examples and the kinds of things that I happen to believe and those. And that's why I'm willing to talk to everybody. And that's not why I think that everything that comes from a Republican is bad or evil or it's terrible. And I try to find things that we can agree. And there's some things that we're not going to agree on all of those things. Yeah. But I promise you, a lot of the messaging that's being emerging since after the inauguration, I don't think that's going to be the kinds of messaging that's going to change our party in the ways that can avoid that we end up in a way not different than we were back in 2024.
What about the Bernie messaging since the election? Really just focusing on billionaires, focusing on these big corporations, focusing on big pharma and how, Democrats need to be the party of reform and going after, the wealth gap. What do you think about that? Does that appeal to you at all?
Well, I think they've been there. Very, very, very bizarre. We were forced to spend till 5 a.m. to keep having all these empty show votes, trying to tie the Republicans to billionaires. I'm like, hey, they campaign with a billionaire. I'm like, we love them. They announce it. They get in front of now they just went at the State of the Union speech. Like, hey, I love that billionaire. That's my partner. Do you, I think, having all of these silly votes till 5 a.m, that never went anywhere. It all just vanishes and never goes anywhere. So like for me, like, I don't agree with a lot of this messaging and I just think for me, it's not helpful. I'm just going to continue to try to find a way forward. But I'm not going to spend time yelling online and dropping silly videos or just.
Yeah, I hear it. All right, last thing. So you had lunch with Trump, and I don't know, he's easy to flatter, right? And afterwards, he's like, that guy is better than I thought or whatever. So I don't know. He's probably more likely to answer your call than mine, saying that he doesn't like he doesn't like traitors. But I'm wondering if you were to call him back up, is there a specific thing they've been doing these first 2 months that you are most upset about, that you would like them to change course on? Not politically, but like an actual substantive policy that you could try to persuade them on. What would it be?
I mean, there'd be there's a lot of things, but I don't flatter myself to think that, like as a Democrat, a senator is going to carry how much weight on that. But So I'm not sure. So like, there's a lot of things, but I don't understand what they're getting out of the chaos. I'd like to say, like, if the Republicans stop being dicks, they're gonna lose an election. And if Democrats don't stop getting kind of crazy or goofy or fringy, then they're never going to lose another election. It's like there's a lot of overreaction. So for me, I really don't understand a lot of the chaos. And then when they say things that are absolutely not true, you just diminish your own credibility. So I think if they make some of those small changes, but
Yeah.
I don't agree with many of the things that happen. But when I do happen to agree that we do need to secure our border, and I do think we need to really stand firmly behind Israel, I agree with a lot of those things too.
So when you did talk to, what did you talk to him about when you guys had lunch? What did you guys talk about?
We talked to a lot of different things.
Like his playlist?
So for me, it was overall a lot of different issues. But I talk to everybody as long as people are playing it straight, and that's what it was. It was a conversation, and
I mean, like the border, or like his hair, or money, crypto. I mean, who knows? Like,
no. And again, it's like that's one of the I never divulge what happens in private conversations. I mean, they're always we always have to have honor amongst thieves, otherwise things will completely break down.
Yeah.
And I met with all of the secretary nominees, and we all had conversations, and I never just ran to the press or said things or did that kinds of things. It's like I play things straight. I will want people to play me straight, and as long as people do the same thing, I'm going to have a dialogue with virtually anyone.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and obviously, I don't think that your wish that the chaos will tamp down is going to happen. So, as more stuff happens, we'll hope to be talking to you again soon.
Very good. Okay. Thank you.